Yeah, you got it. I mean, it's tie-dye too. At the core of it, tie-dye is just this beautiful thing. So, but when you tell people you do tie-dye, they kind of like think of a spiral that you see at the fair.
Right.
You know, so I like to make that distinction, but I'm a tie-dye artist as well. You know.
Yeah.
So my journey, you know, I always wanted to be an artist. I remember growing up, you know, just having composition notebooks full of drawings and one after another. I went to get into this high school, fast forward, and I had to put a portfolio together, and I did for months and months. And the day of the orientation, where you had to go and sit down, you had to draw something on the spot and bring your portfolio, my portfolio went missing.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I don't want to say it was my stepmother, but I just have this intuitive feeling. She just, my father was a little more stern with her son because he was, can I swear on here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he was just
say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. He was just fucking up all the time. So my dad needed to be a little more stern with him, but I think she had this little grudge against me. I could feel it, you know. So
yeah,
I got no proof of it, but that's just my guess at it. Mm-hmm. So I didn't end up making it into that high school, and that kind of where my art dreams fizzled out for a little bit.
Okay.
I played a bunch of hockey, high level, and I focused on that like throughout high school and afterwards.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not from the South?
No, I'm
probably.
from Buffalo.
Okay. Yeah.
Buffalo, New York. Yeah.
Right. Where they have hockey?
Yeah. Every day, starting at like 6 a.m.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, not that 6 a.m. part, but
yeah, no, it's all good. That's what I'm a morning person, so it works out perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was a period a couple of years ago where I was getting up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock every morning.
Dude, I experiment with comedy is always late, so I can't do that now. But like during COVID, I did that, and I would get up and write and watch the sun come up, and then I'd go to sleep at 8, and I've never felt so good. But I can't really do that and participate in comedy. But I think that's the best way to live, honestly.
Yeah, same. I'm right there with you.
We watch the sun come up and just go to sleep when it gets dark.
Yeah, I always make the joke is like I get up so early, I take the birds to work, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would get up with a candle and set it on my table and just be with myself for like an hour with that candle. And
oh, hell yeah! What does that look like? Drawing or writing or just watching the
just
candle?
Being there.
Oh, hell yeah.
Just still.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, that space was available throughout the whole day.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
If something came up or like, you know.
You at least were there earlier that day, so maybe you can find your way back. Like I've been doing like a 10-minute meditation on the morning, just looking at the sun coming up, and I feel like it does stay with me. Like if I start getting stressed around noon, I'm like, no, I was there a few hours ago.
Yeah, right. You can drop in. That doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, that's the cool part. But that was like right after I had my big shift or awakening, whatever you want to call it, is like I really delve into my just touching my soul once a day, you know, and really I could ride it throughout the whole day. You know, I have a very bad temper and anger growing up. It's just how I grew up. You know, we screamed, yelled, and
it's good for hockey, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, not good for relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, and after that, like it literally shifted overnight. You know, I struggled with it for so long because I've always been very connected to my heart, I'd say. So it was always very mind bending to me how I could like emotionally and verbally like attack someone.
Yeah.
And like someone I love.
Yeah.
You know, and I just couldn't figure it out. There was nothing to figure out. It just needed some awareness around it.
Yeah.
And once that happened, it kind of dissolved, and it comes up from time to time, but it's nothing like it was, which it's like freedom.
Yeah, that's relatable. That's my family. It's like not often, but occasionally somebody goes crazy and just says all the meanest things they can to you, and then act like nothing ever happened. And I've kind of just been sorting through that. Yeah, having my own kids in the last few years, the same sort of thing, trying to have more awareness and Yeah, keep a handle on it.
Yeah.
It's a daily renewal.
For sure. I lost my shit on my cats the other day. Just like, but again, it doesn't really come up too often anymore, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah, super grateful
So
for
did,
that.
so did the hand dying sort of come out of that place? Sort of the...
No, let me sorry to get off track.
Oh,
there.
no, we embrace tangents, too. It's
Okay,
like, just
perfect.
go... It's very unstructured.
Perfect. So, I got into graffiti art a lot.
Okay.
That was my focus, and I did a lot of calligraphy. And I've always loved penmanship throughout school, so that's where my art journey went for a few years. And then I needed shirts the one day, and I told my partner to pick up a tie-dye kit. I said, fuck it, I'm an artist, let's just make my own shirts. And we did that, and I was just like hooked immediately. When you open up a tie-dye and you don't know what it's going to look like, and it's really like Christmas every morning.
Yeah. It is funny, too, because it's like what you said about tie-dye. Like, I kind of had this like, tie-dye was like, oh, well, some Grateful Dead shirt that's got the same colors and patterns. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm not going to wear that.
Yeah, no,
but
I
then
feel
it's
you.
really just, like, we have kids that get their clothes dirty, so Emily started dyeing that to cover up the stains, and she started exploring, and she's like, whoa, there's this dude online. We kind of like... We were like, it's not what you would think of as like people listening to this might be like, oh, it's tie-dye. It's like, no, you got to check it out. It's its own.
Yeah.
You have your own voice.
You can't even, that's why it doesn't even make sense unless you can just flop a picture in front of them,
Yeah.
And I was the same way. Like, I think I had one tie-dye in my life prior to doing this whole journey.
Yeah.
I had one tie-dye, and I got that in the relationship before my last one.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, so my buddy came in with like a $50 tie-dye on from a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait, that's fucking tie-dye nowadays? Like, what?
Yeah.
And that's when I told her to go get the stuff, and we
Yeah.
fucked around. And my first shirts, they were nothing special. They were like everyone's first shirts.
Yeah.
But it gripped me tight for whatever reason. And the cool thing about how the universe just kind of lines it up is 2 months into my tie-dye journey, there was a huge show at Level 42 Gallery in the River Arts District. They're
Right.
no longer with us, but they had a tie-dye artist from all over the world, Russia, Japan.
Oh, wow. So you're just getting started and you just get to like stumble into a room and see.
The best.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it was really, really fucking cool. And there's this kid, Landon Bennett, who was in the show as well, and he's from Ohio, and he's also has a Facebook group that he runs for tie-dye. So I had some rapport there with him,
Mm-hmm.
and him and his partner at the time were at the show. We shot the shit with them and stuff like that, and it snowed 4 inches that weekend or whatever, and they were in their van.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, I don't really know him, but I'm always open to open my house to
Right.
strangers as long as I feel the energy straight, So the first day they didn't call us. I think by day 3, I needed money. I needed my check from my job, and we were still off work. So I drove in, picked up my check, and was fired. And she goes, "Here's your check, and I no longer need you."
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I mean, it was just such a shock to me because there was no animosity. There was nothing to really understand why. So I'm driving home, and Landon calls me from getting fired. And I picked up the phone, and I was like, "Hello?" And he wanted to spend the night, and I literally took a big old pause, and I almost told him I can't do it. Like, I just don't feel like company right now. I was just fired. I was like, "Yeah, man, come on over." So he went there, and he had a shirt order of 15 shirts that he had to tie and dye before he left Asheville.
Whoa, this is like cosmic star.
Yeah, it
alignment.
was fucking nuts. It still blows me away.
This is your new destiny.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I just picked his fucking brain for 10 plus hours and became good friends with him. And once I got fired from that, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it took me to find another job, I dumped it in a tie-dye, and it seemed everything I was making just sold immediately.
Yeah.
And I was selling them for like $25, $35 at the time, but every single one of them was selling. And I start doing the math, and I'm like, man, if I can sell, 8 shirts a week or whatever it was at the time, I can, be making more than I am going into a job at 8 hours a week.
Yeah. And you're doing only the work that you can do. So that's much better.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's like I still can't believe that I have this freedom in my life. Let's see. So yeah, that shit happened.
And how long ago was that? This beginning into entry.
2018.
Okay.
Is when we.
So coming up on 10 years, or not really 7.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I can't do math now while I'm talking.
I can't do math ever. Are you kidding me? My math is terrible. So yeah, and then I went and got a job at the gas station just for part-time work. I went full-time and was working there full-time, but then coming home and just going balls. And the reason I started getting up so early in the morning is because I would go to the bathroom middle of the night and remember I had a tie-dye to unwrap.
Right.
And I would get up and unwrap the tie-dye at 3 in the morning. And that just became a habit.
Is it like you have to do it at that time, or is it more like you're just so excited? You're
excited.
Like, now I could see it, so you just wake up. And then you're like, might as well just light the candle now. It's just
Exactly. So, and then the guy who owns the gas station, he's super nice, and he worked with me the whole time that I was starting this business. He would, let me tie shirts while I was there. He let me drop days as I could, like, all right, I only could do 4 days. Okay, I only could do 3 days. And right down to 1 day I was only working there and the rest was tie-dye.
Yeah.
And then finally I was like, all right, man, I'm making the leap. It didn't make sense anymore. So,
yeah.
And at the time, Louisa, which is my partner or ex-partner, she was still doing her job and doing the tie-dye. And it was just exploding. It was every batch that we put up was like sold out overnight.
Yeah. That's so amazing because, that's just, as an artist, I've done music, I do comedy. Like, it's usually way the other way where you go, nobody's asking for it, but you do it because you love it. But when you get that response, that's incredible. Yeah. It's so hard to do as an artist.
Yeah. And because the good thing is we didn't have any resistance where it wasn't working out at any point. So there was just momentum building the whole entire time. There was no doubt ever that it wasn't going to work out. And I think that really made a difference in how we, blew up. And we were doing regular dyes, which is just like on a white shirt, and we switched over to reverse dyes. And at the time, I bet you there was like 1 or 2 people fucking with them like that, because it's a long process. It's multiple steps more than a regular tie-dye. You need more material, and there's possibility of damage because of the bleach. And I remember there was this kid, Mojo Relics, and he's really amazing at bleach dyes, and he had him down pat, and it was just blowing my head off the water, or out of the water, whatever the hell. And the first batch of bleach shirts that we did burnt all of them. And that's like, I think at the time, because we were just starting out, like, a shirt took us 5 hours to do, a bleach shirt.
Yeah.
So you burn 10 of those.
You can see that when you look at them. They don't look like they came off a factory or anything.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. So yeah, opening up a batch of shirts that have hole after hole after hole, and you just dumped all that energy into it.
Yeah.
It was devastating, and they're the coolest fucking shirts ever looking until you got them out of the washer and it was riddled with holes.
Ooh.
Mojo Relics reached out to us because I posted on one of the tie-dye groups, hey, look at what happened, blah, blah, blah. Anybody got any info? And he reached out. He gave us his whole recipe, exactly how he does it. He doesn't have problems with holes. And after that, it just...
Like the bleach is literally burning through the...
Yeah.
the fabric.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's that powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you're using, we're using like Clorox or something, super abrasive.
Yeah.
And he had a bleach that he's done research on the chemical properties and what's less abrasive and
Oh shit. There's different bleaches.
yeah. Yeah. What shirts hold up better and what cotton holds up better. I mean, he
Yeah.
had it all down. And without him, like I don't know that we would be here either, where we're at, because the bleached dyes, that was our signature. People knew that we had the bleach dyes out, him and us. And then they created a group, Reverse Universe, and now everyone's kind of venturing in that direction too. So it's cool.
Imitation,
Yeah.
greatest form of flattery.
Yeah, exactly. and it's their own designs and stuff. It's just cool
Yeah.
to see so many people reaching for something unconventional.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I think you've used sand. There's a lot of, is that right? Is sand involved, or did I just imagine that? I thought I might be misremembering something Emily told me, but it never occurred to me that there is any more than just dye and like rubber bands, but that they're like bleach. And I thought I'd heard somebody using sand or using other kind of just interesting materials. Salt. Yeah, maybe that's
there's
it.
dye or salt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we mix up. We call it chemical water in like the tie-dye groups, but I call it my magic water. Just get that chemical
Yeah.
name out of there.
You
But
bless it in the morning when you light your candle, like say.
I wrote "I love you" on the side of the thing. I'm grateful for you. Because Dr. Emoto, right?
Yeah, yeah. We have that book actually. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
all our jugs, even our iron jug. It's,
Right.
I love you.
Yeah,
and, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like, music is kind of like, just the sound waves. You don't see them, but you're kind of trying to make art out of these just like waves. And when I look at the hand dye stuff you do, it kind of feels to me almost like some visual, like there's these waves that are in motion. You take a snap, like a Polaroid of it, and then you can just wear it. And
I love
like,
that.
It's interesting because you can't really do that with sound,
Right, right. I think there's an artist out there. I'm gonna fuck it up or like give you a half-ass about what he does, but he'll listen to a song and he's got synesthesia, I think. Where
Right. Yeah. Where you see the colors.
Yeah. So he'll paint a song.
Yeah.
And it's really, really badass. I wish I could remember the artist name, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, like, the psychedelic Serenity name, how did that come about?
I kind of just.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know if you need to explain it, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know that there was
bubbles and hand dye art.
Yeah,
and
so
that name just kind of.
Yeah, it went good together. Yeah, and I don't know. I just been good at like coming up with names. Our first, because we did the bubbles first. Louisa and I went up to the mountains. We were eating acid like, once a week. We'd go up on the mountains and just vibe out all day, bring the bubbles.
Yeah.
And, and we were sitting in a creek and I looked at her and I was like, man, I could do Right Now Forever with you. And that was our first title of our photography, was Right Now Forever.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Right Now Forever. That's cool.
Yeah, Right Now Forever photography. And then we went to, and then tie-dye 2 months later just exploded for us. So like, because that was where most of the income was coming from, we weren't selling many bubble prints and we were selling all the tie-dye. So we really just dumped our energy into that. Yeah. And yeah, Psychedelic Serenity kind of just flowed. I don't know how I came up with it, but
was it like social media, or how did you get the sales? Were you using like Facebook at that time? Or?
Yeah, we were doing Facebook majority of it, and like I said, there's a bunch of tie-dye groups on Facebook with like 20, 30,000 people in them.
Okay.
So that's where it started, and then we tried doing the vending thing, and did it for a couple months, and then COVID hit.
Vending, meaning like you set up at a show or something like
that?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Or like a market or whatever.
So you got to put more time in and stuff. I wonder if do you feel like that's worth it? I mean, with the internet transactions, I mean, it's kind of like if you have a number of hours you can put in, the biggest bang is probably make the art. And although I guess it's probably pretty cool to be out there amongst the people too and get the foot traffic where people are just like, oh, yeah, I was just walking by, and then you get that.
Yeah, it's actually, there's a little bit of that that goes on, where it's like it's really cool to connect with people and see people's face light up, because you don't get to see that on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, you see a comment and
Yeah.
this and that, but it's hard to sell $100 tie-dye to people just walking by,
Right,
because
yeah.
they don't see the process
Yeah.
online how they do.
Yeah.
So there's a little more understanding of what goes into each dye when we're asking for that price. When people are like,
Yeah.
even 50, you know. So
Yeah.
when we would vend, we would take a huge loss, but it was worth it because we got to connect.
That makes sense, yeah, because like I also wouldn't spend that much just at that moment, you know. Like Emily, it's funny that you were able to do this week, because Emily, I'm taping a special in 2 weeks. I'm looking for something to wear, so Emily was like, she sent me that shirt that I just got. From you.
Love that.
And
green.
I think maybe wearing it with like a nice jacket, you know. So it's just like a strip of that, and then like a nice
Cool.
like dress jacket on, and yeah, so like online kind of gives you that more. You're like, all right, I need to think about this for a moment. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna like pull the trigger on this, you know. Whereas like, yeah, traffic does feel kind of different. I mean, do you have ambitions to ever have like a shop or anything, like a physical store? Or is that just kind of like too much overhead in the modern age? I guess you got to pay rent, and heat it, and all that cost that would eat into your.
That's the big
line.
thing, and I see other dye artists doing it. I just don't know that it's our, because I don't want to pump out a bunch of $25, $35 tie-dyes.
Yeah.
My art is more intentional, and nothing against anybody who's doing that.
Yeah,
but
that's not what you
do.
do.
For me,
yeah.
I really want to be more intentional with everything that I'm
I think,
creating.
and if you don't have to, like, price yourself out of that, like just the bottom tier, you know, like do a better job, charge more. I think that's a better way to do it if you can anyway. So once you're down at $25, you're competing with all that, you know.
Yeah.
Amateurs.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny. I probably shouldn't even talk about it because it'll bring more attention to it. But there's a kid right now he's got gorgeous dyes. I mean, they're comparable to what I'm creating as far as like intricacy and details and the amount of time that he's probably has in those shirts. And he's selling them for like 25 to 35, some 50. And I'm like, man, how are you even making money at that point?
Yeah.
You know, because there's probably like $12, $15 in a shirt, depending on what kind of shirt you use. And then you have your water, your time, your energy, electricity. I just don't.
And it might just create in people's minds that that's how much it costs, or that's like kind of like maybe bad for the market overall. It's like if you're a musician and somebody's like, well, come play the gig for exposure for free. And it's like, well, then it just makes all my fellow musicians have to compete with somebody who's doing it for free. Like that's really not, and at the end of the day, we're not valuing all the hours that, people put in to craft their art.
Yeah.
So,
I was really blown away by it. I'm like, I'm letting it go.
So when you mentioned several things in there, like intricacy
Mm-hmm.
and like the steps involved, like, I mean, what is that? Is it like a flow state? Like, I mean, what is that? Do you have a picture in your mind, or do you more just like kind of go into a trance and?
Yeah, it's more of a channel, because some of this stuff, like a mandala design, I have an idea what it's going to come out looking like. With my psychedelic folds, I don't know what I'm getting out until I open it.
Yeah.
I kind of just let go and get the human out of the way is one of my big go-to phrases.
Yeah.
When I have a YouTube channel too where I do tutorials, and that's what I always try to like.
Oh, cool. We'll
invite people
link
to
that
do
on here.
Yeah, cool. And I just tell them, try to get the human out of the way for a little bit and really just let go.
The ego, yeah.
Before my awakening, I wanted to control every little process, to the ice melting here, and like not oversaturating, and make sure every color that's next to each other blend well. And it's just like, it was so heavy.
It's exhausting to
so fucking
control,
heavy.
like when you can get to that. And maybe you needed that a little more earlier on, but when you get to the point where your intuition or your DNA or your spirit kind of just can make the right moves, I mean, that's a real
just trust
trip. Yeah,
it's a good practice in trusting too.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of trying to control the process, and then once I was able to fucking let go of that shit, it just really opened up my spirit. I mean, the business was already going and the art was already being seen by a bunch of people. But for me personally, it was just so freeing. It was just so freeing in my head.
Yeah. So there's still got to be some times where at the end you go, shit, I mean, is it always like distrust and I don't know what it's going to be like 100% of the time? Or you like, no, that's badass? Or do you, no, 20% of them, you got to, half of them, you got to like,
there's definitely ones that I go, oh.
And then can you like put it through some other process? Or do you have like the part in the store where they have the like slightly misshapen bin where they're like, well, this is a $5 bin.
You can, but here's the crazy fucking part of it all is like we would do 30 shirt batches and 2 or 3 that we didn't really care for and didn't really want to sell.
Yeah.
But bills called that we put them up and sold, and like we learned really quick that how we perceive the shirt is looked at completely different than someone else.
Totally.
90% of the time, the shirts that we fucking hated, the first ones to go.
That's crazy. So it's just totally subjective. So I love that. I mean, that tracks with every conversation I've had on this podcast about, the single for the album, the artist likes the one that's like the least popular. It's like, well, that's the one that meant the most to me. Right. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So you just kind of like, is this how I want to be like displaying myself? Because it's not art up to what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
Or like what I'm trying to accomplish. But once I let go of all of it, I put them all up and let people decide,
Yeah, and that's interesting because, I mean, there are some arts where it's like if you're building a house, it's like, there might be a little of that, but you're kind of like, you've worked it out and you execute the plan you came up with in advance, And then there's other art forms where you kind of, which as I get older is more exciting to me, like I used to only play songs that were written with people, but now I'm getting into jamming more.
Oh, cool.
Where it's like, let's just see. And that's what this is. We're like, I don't know where we'll be in 5 minutes. But that, to me, that's a lot more alive, is to do art where you don't know, what it's going to be at the end.
Yeah.
And then you look and like the shit that you tried to control is not as good as the shit that just came through you. That's like the most beautiful, reassuring thing in life. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I've done experiments where like I will sit there and try to place every dot and try to keep the color separated, and then another one I'll die in 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And the one I died in 2 minutes was insane.
I love that.
The other one, it was just like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah, get the human out of the way. I like that.
Yeah.
When you say human, does that mean kind of like ego, or is that have some different? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Just the egoic mind,
the controlling,
where it's always trying to control the moment, the way we want to have the moment present itself.
Yeah, and then there's this other one where you set up the conditions for something to happen, and you've done it enough to where you let go and trust. Like in comedy, it's like new comedians are usually like, I'm trying to say the things I memorized from before and act like I'm being natural, but then the longer you go, the more you're like, hey, what's going on with you? You like crowd work, like pulling things out of the moment. And I feel like on my journey, that's just like, there's just so much more interesting when you're just like,
you can let go and just fucking, it's freedom. It's true freedom.
And then you have a snapshot of it afterwards that you, I don't know.
And there are other artists that like, some of these guys have fucking rulers and protractors, and I mean, they're deep in the planning stages, and their shirts take like 3 sessions to dye.
Yeah.
And so they'll tie one section of the shirt up, dye it, and then it needs to be rinsed, washed, and then they go in and tape off that section and tie it off so that nothing gets to that section, and kind of weaves it into the next part. Yeah. And it's just really, really wild. My brain don't work like that.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for it. And I feel like I'm a pretty patient individual.
No, I was saying, I mean, there's some people that'll record an album, they'll spend like a year on a song just getting the hi-hat EQ just right, and it sounds good, and I'm like, well, that's not me. I'm gonna lose my mind. Like, I need to just like flow it out and then do a bunch of them, and then it kind of happens on its own. So there's different ways, for your voice to come through.
Yeah.
But that's cool. I mean, do you feel like you're kind of like getting more and more towards like your way of doing it, or do you feel like when you look back on your body of work that there's just eras, that it's always kind of like, do you get bored when you get something is there a part of you that does that make sense? Like you kind of, this is my phase where I did it this way, and then, you know, does it feel like it's always changing, or does it feel like you're kind of zeroing in on?
Yeah, I would say it's always changing. I mean, there are eras, I guess, or like segments or whatever you want to call them. But it really just goes before my awakening and after my awakening, because the ego was very involved.
Yeah.
Into this tie-dye shit prior. There was competition,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know, it's not what it is anymore to me.
Yeah.
And I actually I had to like really shift my perspective on going about and wanting to continue to do it, because I didn't want it to be like, this guy's buying $100 tie-dye and that's going to feed his ego because he's going to have a better shirt than this guy. And like, but I quickly shifted and it was just like, I just need to make it where it's intentional. When I'm there, I call in any energies to help with healing and protection and grounding and balance and connection to self, and you know, just work with that energy and stay present and to bring those in.
Calling in those energies, is that like just thinking it or saying a prayer or writing? Like
Both. What is? Yeah, so I've written on the shirts. I say it out loud sometimes. Sometimes it's just in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it varies. It really does.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll take the tuning fork, 528, and go around and hit the ice cubes, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool. The tuning fork, when you get it going and you put it on the ice cube, it just starts melting right into the cube because of vibration.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that's why I'm obsessed with drumming now, because it's like if I get them tuned just right and I'll play in here, and it's just like the vibrations are so healing, you know. Just come out here for like an hour or two alone and just do. It's just like, it just puts you in some transcendent like, because the competition thing, I mean, I'm better than I've ever been, because I'm like in my 40s and I'm like, you know, life is humbling, but that's still, you know, seeing someone that else doing well, or, you know, having to follow somebody who just had a great set and tore the room apart. Like that's a continual thing to try to really, you know, embrace what everybody's doing and not try to be the best or not try to be competitive. That's just that's a lifelong slow
release into that.
Yeah, which is like, man, I hope to like be fully zen by the time I die.
Yeah, I because I you know, my ego was pretty fucking in the forefront, you know.
Pre-awakening?
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? You referred to
sure.
the awakening.
Yeah,
like, I'm interested.
Louisa, like, I'd say 3 years ago, I don't even know at this point, but we were madly in love, and we did art every single day together. We ran the business together. I mean, we were just there with each other. And I also had my temper that would show up once a month, but she didn't know what day that was. So it was like eggshells for the whole 30 days, you know, and it got to a point where she had to make that call, and she handed me a letter one day and walked out the door. And
damn.
Yeah. And, you know, our business is still thriving. It was just a fucking blow. I mean, it literally shocked me to my very core that it was all happening.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe 3 days into it, after she left, and she didn't want to really talk about anything. She didn't have any explanations, but this letter was deep and like touched on a bunch of shit. You know, and it's not that I was unaware of most of the stuff. I was very aware that I was doing the stuff. I just didn't know how to fucking correct it. I didn't know even where to start, because I didn't know where it was coming from. I wasn't abused. I wasn't any of that stuff. I didn't have a bad childhood. Yeah,
there wasn't like that one obvious thing you could be like, oh, I just gotta sort through that.
Exactly. So, yeah, I was sitting on the couch and staring into space, literally daydreaming and listening to Moji. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a spiritual teacher, but just very peaceful, and he works on emptying and like just becoming still and nothingness and touching that space. And this the energy that was flowing through me because of this breakup and like not just this unknown of what the fuck is going on, was pretty intense. And as I'm staring into space and he's talking about the present moment and presence, and I'm just there with his words, and I felt none of the craziness of what I was experiencing throughout the day.
Huh.
And so I knew I was onto something.
Yeah.
I knew the present moment. And by the way, like I've been listening to Ram Dass, Moji, all these guys for the last couple years now, but I understood them intellectually.
Yeah.
And then I had that experience. And literally my whole fucking life shifted like that. And it was so crazy because my ego is still fighting to stay.
Yeah.
You know, it's like gripping at me, like send her flowers to text her, but she didn't want none of that shit.
Yeah.
And I was really done trying to manipulate her consciousness in any way.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say boo to her to try to make her come back. Like I just didn't, you know, and I'm on the phone with my father and he's telling me to do all this shit. I'm like, Dad, you don't fucking get it. Like I just can't.
Take her out to a nice dinner.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, that's what I would have done, you
Yeah.
know, but like at that point I fucking knew better and I understood kind of the law of attraction in and out and how that worked and how that if I pushed and she didn't want, it would just keep shoving her away.
Yeah.
And I was just really, and I had to produce art to pay my bills. We were doing it full time together. So when she left, I had to still pay the bills. I still had to do art, but I was like super fucking heavy energy running through me. It's the last thing I wanted to do was sit down with art. But that was the vehicle that I needed to become more conscious and aware and like really sink that into my being, you know, let it integrate.
Yeah.
Instead of just hearing it and fucking,
you
know, going about it my business. And there was a point where I was like walking in my car and my equilibrium was off. I felt like, what do you get when dizzy? What do they call it? Vertigo?
Yeah.
It almost felt like that, but it felt like my being shifting. And it was just the wildest shit ever.
Like the ghost of the old you just being like,
exactly.
Out and some new, like, ugh.
Exactly. And I was talking to my parents, you know, and my mom wanted to fly down right away and like be there with me. And she goes, no, he's got to do this by himself. Like it's just something that I know he has to do by himself. And she didn't come down. And, you know, I would explain it to my parents as like the best, worst time of my life.
Yeah.
You know, for the first time ever, I like touched a deeper space within me that wasn't controlled by anyone's actions, any of the environment I was around. It was solely inward. And I also was really good at becoming aware of any negative thinking going on. She's not coming back, or she's, you know, whatever the case was. I was able to hear that thought and then shift it to a more positive direction.
Oh, that's huge.
It's huge.
That's another one of those things that it's like I never heard growing up. Now I'm aware of its power, but it's like a daily. It's not like, oh, I got that figured out.
Right.
It's like, no, that's a daily. That's why I try to sit in the morning is try to hold on to that. You know, depending on what'll happen during the day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful shit, and I was just like blown away by the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
You know, because like I just thought of awakening as this crazy fucking process, and you have to go out into the hills of the Himalaya. You know, I just didn't understand, and I also, because I was like onto the conspiracy shit and like really seeing how the food they provide us is poison, and I just thought I was already awakened. Yeah. You know, so I wasn't really looking any deeper.
But there's levels.
There's levels, right. And so, and the last thing she wanted to do was leave me because she loved me. We had the business together, and she was terrified of telling me because of my reaction. So like, she really just is so amazing for really finding that courage and like following through. Yeah. And I'll be forever grateful for her.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's incredible that something profoundly huge and positive was, it's like both like the yin and yang of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was like a 4-month period once she seen the shift, I mean, she felt it immediately. She knew something had changed, but there's this deep trust issue because she was never able to be around me and be herself.
Yeah.
She didn't really trust what I was telling her 1,000%, even though she could feel it and in her heart she knew, but there was still a resistance there. There was still like, I don't fucking believe you.
Yeah.
But as the days went by, she'd found her own place at that point, but we were still in contact and seeing each other from time to time. We weren't hanging out all the time. But I was really doing the fucking inner work during those 4 months because she wanted space. And so instead of doing anything else, I just dumped it into me.
Yeah.
And it really helped integrate that.
Were you doing hand dyeing at that time too? Was that part of it?
Yeah. That's right. I had to sit down with the work to pay my bills.
But that's a crazy era of your work.
Yeah.
Do you keep pictures and?
Oh yeah.
I guess if you're selling them online, you're taking pictures.
Yeah.
So you ever go back like flipping through the pages of some old?
Oh, 1,000%.
I can see it in those designs. Like,
yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Well, I don't know. There's I was talking to one of my friends yesterday. I had one of the shirts on that I did. It was like the first batch that I got through, and I needed to sell out. My fucking rent was due. So, and it was a liquid dye batch, and I didn't do liquid dye all like that. We did a lot of ice dyeing early on. Like the first 4 years we did ice dyeing. It was just our medium. And so I was a little unsure, but it felt what I was supposed to be doing in that moment. But I remember just every shirt from that batch was just incredible.
Yeah, right.
And they sold out overnight. It was insane. So
that tracks with the songs you would write during a period transition like that. Those are going to be ones later on. It's like, yeah,
those are hitting.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the weird challenge. It comes up on here sometimes, like the challenges of trying to be a well-adjusted adult and then still make the best art you can. I mean, there's that cliche that being tortured is or not, tortured isn't the right word, but going through some shit does kind of help the art, and sometimes artists are scared to get too stable or
right,
too healthy because they're afraid the art. And I mean, I don't think that's always true, but some of the funniest comedians, they're wild cards, and it's you don't know if they'll make it to the show or not. But when they get up there, if you're on the brink of insanity and you're holding a microphone, it's pretty fucking compelling to watch.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So it's it's me trying to be I got to be stable and do the family thing, but then there's that party that's wants to just be
yeah,
just for the art.
Yeah, no, and I have a hard time when I'm in these negative spaces, or negative because they're not negative when you're growing. You're growing through that suffering.
They can feel that way in the moment. Yeah.
Exactly, and I lost my train of thought.
As far as being going through some shit, and maybe your best art.
Oh yeah, I have a hard time sitting down with when I'm in a negative space to create. But I literally was forced to do it because of my bills.
Right.
So it was so
that's kind of a good thing about monetizing your art is you have to have those. You're not just I'll do it when I feel like it. It's no, there's a deadline.
Yeah, and that's what I've been wrestling with too, because the energy is different when you don't have to do it. When I was being called to do it.
Yeah.
It just felt better.
Yeah.
Where when my bills needed to be paid, it was sit down with it now, and then I would have to shift into that. No, this is going to be a vehicle to just become more present and conscious and create something beautiful. And that's where I stayed, I would just keep emptying and then falling back into the present. And my mind was fucking running a mile a minute some days, to the point where I thought I was going fucking crazy, and I would just keep returning to the art and, focusing on every fold and just move, slowly through it. And I ended up getting through it. And
yeah, That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that it's like a hands-on thing too. It's not like computer art, you know. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah, you got to get you got to get in there.
like
Yeah.
I'd imagine that maybe even like the humidity in a room or things like that might, you know,
It affects all of it. There's
Yeah,
so many
you-
fucking variables.
Yeah, that's what's great about sound too. It's like you tune up your drums and you take them to a different room, hit it. It's a whole different sound.
Oh, yeah, I
like
didn't think
humidity
about that.
shifts, and it's I love that because it is like you have to be present. You have
Yeah.
to be present, and it's a thrill.
Yeah, for sure. I went up to Buffalo for Christmas and brought some dyes and shirts with me up there, and I didn't get the fucking consistency right because they melted
Different
slower
climate.
in the fucking garage up there than down here. You know, so it was like
They melt. You talking about ice dyeing?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
the
no.
shirts.
Yeah.
I
I was like, the shirts are melting now. Oh, man.
but yeah, I just didn't get the saturation right or
Yeah.
as like vibrant as I wanted to. You know, up here where I'm doing it all the time, even going from apartment to apartment, it varies. You know,
It's like cooking or something too. Is another one of those where it's like you're not gonna go to Ingles and buy the same ingredients, or you know, and it's not gonna be the same.
right.
Like every time is gonna be different
Yeah,
with the humidity and just different shit. That's crazy.
yeah. It's really wild though, the variables that are in tie dye. They like to just with liquid dye, ice dyeing. They got hot water irrigation is a different technique, and all of them have different variables that we switch one little thing, and it's that's it.
You into the Avatar world at all, like the earth bending, fire bending? My kids are into it. So
Yeah, I mean,
I was curious if there's some kind of like, if there's like other ones that you like someday, how, you know, you like, do you have ones that you just mentioned like irrigation and some
Yes.
words that, are there processes that you're still kind of like, I'm going to give that a go one of these days? You
Yeah,
know?
for
I'm gonna,
sure.
I'm going to get a sitar in here eventually and, you know, do that. It's like,
Yeah, no.
Does it feel like you can always kind of keep, you know,
You
or
can-
invent some new potion that like the world's never seen or something like that?
1,000%. There's been so many like fucking new things introduced since COVID. Like, cause I think tie dye was like
Yeah.
the number 3 searched thing on
That's
Google.
when we found you.
Yeah,
Sitting around
perfect.
feeling, we got to find some new shit.
That's fucking awesome. So yeah, it was like the 3rd searched Google fucking keyword
Whoa.
in 2020.
Huh.
And so the hot water irrigation, you know, it's like nerdy chemist who like worked with that, like
Yeah.
came up. He was like, wait, the dye sets at 148 degrees. What if I just put the dye on the shirt and then sprayed the 148 over it? And voila, he could make a shirt in an hour, you know? And he was like figuring this shit out slowly but surely.
Yeah. And then the internet makes it so it's just like, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really cool to see. And personally, I like combining the tie-dye with a different process. Like I did the shelves where I built triangle shelves and then had the tie-dye as the backdrop. Or like, are you familiar with cyanotype?
Mm-mm.
So it's a process where you can like, you put the liquid on the shirt and then you would like lay down a flower or leaves and then you go put it out in the sun and let it hit for 15 minutes. And then when you remove that, the silhouettes of the flowers are there and there's a color blue or there's purple or whatever.
Like just one thing went through, like it not.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like a silhouette, and you can also do like pictures and you turn them into negatives, and then when the sun hits them and puts them down, it turns it to a regular photo.
That's insane.
It's fucking endless.
That's insane.
It's really endless, the stuff that you could do with tie-dye and incorporate. And I like, even in my collaborations, I like working outside our medium. You know, I worked with a woodworker who hand burned little tiny beads that went on our hoodie strings, or a glass artist that made a glass bolo for the hoodie strings. Or,
Yeah.
you know, just other painters that I collabed with that shelf on. You know, she painted the outside of the shelf, and it's just cool to work outside the medium.
Yeah, and
You
collaborations are great too. I mean, that's like, for me, that's what this is like each time I do an episode of this, like I'm gonna leave with a little more, like my jokes and songs are gonna be a little different, you know.
Oh,
Like, a
cool.
collaboration is always, it's always good during the collaboration, but then afterwards, just the cross-pollination
Yeah, I love that.
of ideas.
I actually was listening to one of your shows this morning. You're good, man.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, really dig
It's
it.
humbling, man. It's a long, slow journey, but I love the challenge of it, of trying to do that. But yeah, I mean, this is like interesting too, because we're kind of like jamming with words, but you do this like very physical stuff. So I just like the spaces, the leap, even to try to put words on what you do, I think is kind of like,
Yeah.
like dancing about architecture or whatever the quote is, it's like,
People are like, how'd you do that? I'm like, I wasn't here for half of it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You're asking me to
That's
sum
funny.
up a 5-hour process in a comment. Like, how
Yeah.
the fuck would you like me to do that?
Yeah, for me it's more interesting just kind of like the stories behind it, because I think, people are like, tell me in 5 minutes how to do it. It took you all this time to do it. And it's like, that's not possible. But what they should be trying to do is find their own journey, which is going to take time, and it's going to be their own like pain and joy, and then come out with something different. So I'm always interested in like what were the feelings and experiences, and sometimes like it sounds like this is kind of your, as far as like putting yourself out there as an artist, like you like more drawing and hockey and stuff
Right.
before, but this is like hand dyeing. Was it you didn't have some Etsy shop full of other stuff before, or you weren't getting up and singing songs on an acoustic guitar or reading poetry or anything?
I was in a couple like there was this like West Side art co-op. It was an artist co-op, and it was right in West Asheville. And I was fucking around with alcohol inks too, which is another awesome meditative medium.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take shit to do, and it's really fun to watch all the colors blend, and it's super inexpensive to get started. But I had some of those up in there, and I was doing the pour paintings when it was first coming out. I had a few of those hanging, but it never did shit.
I mean, I don't know what alcohol ink means, but it sounds like it would be on the way to, you're kind of like a mad scientist. I don't know, chemistry.
Yeah, it's definitely
like,
got some crossovers. Just the colors.
Scientist with the two bubbling beakers and the coat. Like there's, chasing time as these, I don't know. It sounds like it would be.
It's
like,
right on the timeline. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should, in my studio, I have magnetic stirrers that we have put beakers on to mix all the dye up. So I really feel like a fucking scientist in there. I don't know shit about chemistry or anything like that. But, some of these guys are like, like I write everything down and I know exactly like 0.7 of this and creates this effect, and they can give you the rundown. I'm just like, I just don't care.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about artists is you can be either type. It's like I memorize all my jokes and I know exactly where the beats are, and somebody else is like, I get up and see what happens. I start talking to people, and like,
oh wow,
it's great that there's so many ways to get there. And that's what I love about it is you find your own process.
Yeah, and that's like with life, in the awakening journey. I was like very stubborn about how I thought other people should view it.
Yeah.
And everyone's doing their own thing. They're all figuring it out by themselves. And I could be there to guide, but like I was trying to force my perspectives on people, and it was just like it's not the gig, Yeah.
Yeah. When you were like younger and starting out in art, did you have like influences with like comic book art was like the first thing that even before music, I was like, I want to just draw like Wolverine and shit. And then was that?
Yeah, I would say comic book cards, like DC Comics and shit. I had like, the packs of cards that we had binders full.
Yeah.
And I can remember, I can like see them in my composition notebooks, just like fucking superheroes I would draw, And I guess that was like the first inspiration that I would get from them. And then when I got back into art, it was 2012. I was at my like second or third rehab at this point for heroin, and just picked up a pack of Sharpie markers and went nuts. And I got deeply swayed by street art. It just lit me up.
That means like graffiti?
Yeah, like Banksy and like the big murals. And, the really beautiful shit in the River Arts
District.
That?
You could like do that still just blows my mind.
Yeah.
That, like you're having like this, using such a coarse an instrument that for me is just, and then you end up with this.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because there's different techniques. Like it blows me away. Some of these fucking guys, because they have can control, and they can like let the mist out like this or as skinny as that, depending on how much they're pressing that button in, and they'll just go like this, like move it, and it's just like this fat to skinny, and it's just fucking gorgeous.
I love that. It's like, for me, it's like on or off. It's like there's two, down or not pressed, but it's like, no, there's a spectrum of like, that's crazy.
If I come across some videos, I'll shoot them over in your messages.
Yeah, there's a guy, I don't, aware of Gus Cuddy, the local. I want to get him on here. I want to talk to him.
Have you ever
I'm
met
talking
him
to you? Yeah, I made music with. I made some songs with him like 20 years ago.
No shit.
There's a guy named Philo who they were in a Fist Family thing, and I collaborated with him. So I've kind of just like been aware of him from afar. But similar to you, I'm like, I'd love to just sit down and hear what the fuck goes on in his head.
Right, exactly.
Because the end product blows my mind. I'm endlessly fascinated by that.
Same.
And as I get older, it's like I used to be like, well, I'm doing jokes now, so I want to talk to other joke makers, but now I'm finding it's actually more interesting to talk to people in different mediums. And then that kind of creeps in, and you start doing jokes like hand dyeing or something like that, and then that's when it gets real fucking
fun.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's fun. Yeah.
Doesn't always work, but that's
yeah. No, I mean it's I see where you're going. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah, I'm not as good as Gus or them boys, but I can paint a decent amount, and it's a lot of like techniques where you see this skinny line, but they're cutting into that, and like they're not just dropping that skinny line all the way down. Sometimes it's like a three-part paint where they need to do different sections in order to cover this section up, but I've done some intricate pieces, and you go over one spot and you're like, ooh, I wasn't supposed to paint that. I can go back over it, and you're just correcting and
that's
adjusting.
I know with songs, like recording songs, that those end up being my favorite parts, is the blemishes that I had to either leave or fucking figure out a way to make that
fit in.
Asset. Yeah, fit in. It's exactly. Whereas like I see people go like, all right, we just recorded the song, we'll just clean that up. It's like, no. Just sit with that for a few days, because the little human blemishes are often the best part. Especially in a world where everything can be photoshopped and auto-tuned and fixed. It's like, I think people are hungry for the little human mistakes.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. Like with your art, I can feel it's like made by a person in a world that's increasingly like just
AI. I'm like, AI can't fucking make no time.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, you can't write jokes either, right? Like, I hope that day is not coming soon. Or, I mean, I do like web development for my job, and it's like, I keep wondering, like, it seems like the gap between just asking a robot to make your website app for you and needing somebody like me is just like, that gap is shrinking. So
yeah, I'm not. I'm on Shopify, and I just like the very bare minimum because I'm not very good at that shit.
Yeah.
And same with YouTube. I just started monetizing on there, and I'm not making anything crazy, but it's cool to have that. But there's so many different ways you can supplement your income on there. You can have companies reach out to you to do like a 1-minute ad in the beginning of every video, and they can pay you monthly. I reached out to a dye company to see if they wanted to like me to promote them in the beginning. You guys get any new dyes that you want me to test out, send them my way. I'll do a little video on them, and like you guys can pay me a fee every month. But there's things set up in YouTube to do that.
Yeah.
Like pull in other companies that have nothing that I might not even have thought of. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. The space of trying, like, do you feel like you're able to like, or it's feasible to make a living doing as an artist, or is that?
Yeah, it's been what I've been doing full time for the last 5 years.
Okay, hell yeah, that's awesome to hear, because yeah,
yeah. I mean, when I first started, I mean, it was like
it's hard.
There was no fucking dude. It's crazy.
But you have this interesting thing where when you hit on this one, like you said, you like the market like responded early, so you knew that's so rare.
Yeah, it was like there was never any fucking doubt. And then like Louisa, that woman was such a muse for me when we first started, because like everything I fucking would open, she would just be like, oh my god, like, and I genuinely feel it from her. And it was just like all the fucking motivate. It was just so beautiful to experience. And again, if I ever be grateful for her for that. Yeah, because
if you're sitting there alone, maybe you would have been like,
exactly.
I'm having negative thoughts.
And
today.
I would do that. And she'd be like, shut up, you're crazy. Look at this. She was just fucking right back to the.
But then the part where the whole world is also into it, that's the part that blows my mind. You know?
It's fun. When,
like, you know, my girlfriend at the time's like, that song's amazing. I'm like, I know, right? And like, still waiting for, you know.
I'm having a hard time getting on board with all this, like, positivity and, like, just compliments. No, it doesn't really.
It's hard to take compliments, right? You struggle with that?
I do. I didn't ever before. And now it's just like, because my ego is backseat, you know? It's like, I mean, if you just read some of the comments on my YouTube, I mean, it's just like beautiful thing after beautiful thing. And I'm like, yeah, you know, like I love that I'm doing that for you and like creating that space, but I don't feel this over sense of like, fucking good job, Mark. Like, look what you're fucking doing. Yeah. You know, because it's, I mean, I had a nurse sit down and I did like a little 10-minute breath work in the beginning. She don't even fucking do tie-dye, and she came across my video and wrote this beautiful message how she dropped in with me prior to work, and it just set her day, you know? So it's like, I need to really gravitate and focus on those, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing because I do this all the time with lots of different artists, and I think it's worthwhile 1,000% if no one ever does notice, but you're rare in that, like, you know, it's resonating with a lot of other people, which is cool. And even if it's not, it's like, I think it's still, you know, priceless because you're working through your shit and stuff. But then on top of that, to have the responses, I mean, that's pretty, you're definitely onto something.
Yeah, and I think that's where my next path is YouTube. Because I do enjoy teaching and I feel like I am good at it. Yeah. You know, and there's not a lot of long form tutorials on YouTube. A lot of them are just time lapses with music in the background. There's no explanation. So you're kind of like figuring it out as you go. And while I'm doing all this explanation, I'm also trying to invite them to bring in their own energy into it. Yeah. You know, that's one thing that I like hit home hard too, is like, you're more than welcome to carbon copy this and, you know, try to create it, but I invite you to like put your own spin on it. Yeah. You know, because that's what I would do. You know, someone would show me something, I'm like, well, what if I did this first, and like, you know, and really delve into your spirit. Yeah. You know, what's your spirit telling you to do?
Yeah, that's what this podcast is about. It's like really just about like I mean, it's cliche, but it's like say the things only you can say. You know, that's really everybody's best art is never, you know, copying people. And I know that, having spent most of my younger years trying to copy people, you know, and then eventually you try to just assimilate it into saying what only you can say. Yeah. No matter what medium you're in. And if you did those videos too, I think people would like get to know you, and I think that could probably help huge. Too, because people kind of want the story. You kind of want like the guy in the story and stuff.
1,000%.
And then when people are like, what is that? You're like, oh, it's this guy who's like from Buffalo and lives in Asheville, and that all that can kind of create more of like the myth, you know, the myth behind the art.
Yeah, no, it's a story. It's like people want to follow the journey. They want to see the journey just as bad as I want to be on it. Yeah, you know, and it's really cool to have that.
And this podcast is like, you know, I would want to hear you talk about this. So now I'm just like, well, I'm just going to put it up, you know? Yeah, like perfect. That's what I love to do, is listen to people talk about their process too. Like, it makes me appreciate it more. And then it gives me more ideas for my art, which then makes me like the person and want to support them more too. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate you like having me on. This is something new for me. So it's like, it's really cool to experience and play with. So. Yeah. Yeah, just fucking extra grateful for you and your space that you opened up for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Glad you could be here in the shed. This is the box of collaboration.
I love it. Do you ever have like a few people over and jam out here?
Yeah, that's like, it's like I'm kind of doing it family, and I got a full-time job and the podcast and work, so I don't do it as much as I'd like, but that is my favorite thing, is to get people over here and make sounds, you know, which we're doing now, but do it with instruments too, and not know where it's going to go. There's actually a lot of comedians that played music first or still do, so sometimes we'll get comedians in here that you've heard tell jokes, but then you'll make music with them, and after you play music with somebody, you're like, oh, I think I kind of know, like,
understand them a little bit better. Yeah,
it's like, oh, that's a different voice, you know, like the without words sounds.
Yeah, that's fun. We would have these things. This is just a cool portion of the journey, is we would every year or every 2 years, we would have like 10 to 15 artists out to Asheville from all over. We'd invite people from the groups, the tie-dye groups, and they would all come in for a week, rent bed and breakfasts, and then we would all get together at my house, and we would just fucking nerd out on tie-dye all day long.
Oh, hell yeah.
And you would level up so much during these Serenity soirees. You know, because you a lot of stuff that I was doing just wasn't fucking necessary.
Yeah.
Because you would see someone else not do it at all and not make a difference in the process or in the results. And I was like, man, save like 2 hours worth of work here, you know, just seeing someone else do it, you know?
Yeah.
And it was really cool that everyone in the tie-dye community, almost everyone in the tie-dye community,
which is pretty good.
yeah,
Almost everyone.
Yeah.
Whatever you're about to say.
doesn't really gatekeep, you know, they're
Yeah.
like open to sharing. And
That's a weird thing to be gatekeepery about, because it's like you just look at it, you're like, is there any art that says more that it is open and
right.
accepting?
It's just not that
to be
serious,
a dick
bro.
about it is like,
It's just not that serious.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like being real serious about comedy. I take comedy real seriously.
right,
It's
right.
like, I don't think you're supposed to.
You're the wrong profession. Man.
Yeah, it's great being around folks too. Like that's something that I've like when I was younger, I really wanted to sing songs and be like the main person, you know? So I said no to a lot of opportunities to like play bass or drums in somebody else's band. And now I'm like, oh man, if I could go back, I would totally do more of that so I could observe others and learn, yeah, maybe I'm doing a bunch of shit I don't need to do. And I've only kind of leaned into that more in the last 10 years. And it's like, whoa, actually just like listening and observing other people without being threatened, but just being like, wow, you
in
know,
the background.
that part of me that's like, I can't accept that they know a better way, because that's just like, no, accept it and then let go of the, you know, just grow, evolve.
Yeah.
It's been it took me a long time to learn that.
One of Louisa's sayings that is going to stick with me forever is just like remain teachable. You know, just remain teachable, because you can learn something from every single person you interact with every single day. You know, there's like opportunities for growth and like a little lesson with everyone.
Yeah.
You know, even a child.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's that's one of them. Remain teachable is another one, and it'll stick with me forever, because I'm that guy. I'm like, I know the way. You know, that's how it was. You know, it's just like,
it's your human getting in the way.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I would try to control her process, and it's like, no, if you do it this way, you won't fucking have such a hard time tying it off at that, you know, and that she wouldn't want to do it that way, and it was just like, it's fucking aggravating me. And finally, I was just like, man, just find out on her own.
That is parenthood for us. As Emily and I are both like, we do shit well, we control, and then it's like, you just. And then you start seeing your kid be like being controlling. And you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
I gotta just let go.
Just gotta let go and let them be their own being. You know, it's a big one for me.
Understanding that here versus like embodying that through every fucking like short-tempered, tired moment in the day.
Yeah, because
quite humbling.
Yeah, and that's where the morning comes in. You know, again,
yeah.
Just like dropping into that space and having it available whenever you need to.
Yeah.
You know? So that when you say it the first time, and they don't listen, and you're like, wait a second, I'm actually got to just sit back and let this play out, you know?
Yeah, one thing we are doing is we're like, you know, I will just be in the moment, be like, I see myself trying to control you. I don't know why I'm doing that. That's the thing I'm working on, you know, it's like, we never heard our parents, you know,
right?
You know, like ever. I mean, it was a different. We have a lot more information now, so I'm not blaming them, but it's like,
yeah, same.
Makes me feel like at least I'm saying like, I was wrong, you know. Whereas like my parents, like
no accountability there.
Like, now they're cool. They're like old and sweet.
Yeah, right. Why do I got to do this? Because I said so.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like, all right, we're just being assholes. Okay,
right.
Like, that's all we knew. You know.
Yeah, and it's just different generations. You know, and their generation before them beat them with fucking canes.
Right.
And shit, you know.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah.
It's just a different time, and I don't blame them whatsoever.
No. Yeah.
Very grateful for them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, you know. Yeah, it's wild. This journey of being human, is quite the crazy one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You want to wrap up on that note? It feels like a good place to end. Yeah. All right.
Sounds good to me.
Well, Mark, thank you for coming on.
Thank
It was
you.
awesome talking to you.
Yeah.
Love your art.